Assalamualaikum, and today I will be presenting about the introduction of our assignment about the movie The Long Walk. So let's start with 1.1, which is the background information. The Long Walk is adapted from a novel by Stephen King, a well-known author famous for his strong character development. The story focuses deeply on the psychological and emotional growth of its characters, making it suitable for personality analysis. Let's move on to 1.2, director and main cast. The movie is directed by Francis Lawrence, who is also known for directing The Hunger Games. His experience in handling intense and emotional storytelling helps bring the novel's characters to life. The main cast includes Cooper Hoffman as Ray Garrity, the determined protagonist, David Johnson as Peter McBride, Ray's supportive companion, and Garrett Waring as Stebbins, a walker known for his physical endurance. Next, 1.3, the genre. This movie belongs to the dystopian survival thriller genre. It takes place in a controlled and harsh world where young people are forced into a dangerous competition, highlighting emotional and psychological struggles. The next point is 1.4, purpose of the assignment. The purpose of this assignment is to analyze personality development through the character's emotions, behavior, and responses to pressure. The movie shows how fear, stress, motivation, and friendship influence personality. And the last point is 1.5, rationale for choosing the movie. We chose the movies because it clearly shows changes in characters' behavior and personality. Each character comes from a different background, revealing their strengths, weaknesses, and true selves, especially Ray Garrity, who struggles emotionally but learns to cope through support from others. I will presenting for the next slide, which is overview of the plot. Let's begin with the beginning. At the beginning of the movie, Ray Garrity is chosen by lottery to participate in the long walk, which is a deadly competition with a life-changing prize. Despite his mother's efforts to stop him, Ray remains determined to join. The competition involves 100 boys who must maintain a minimum walking pace of 4 miles per hour, as receiving more than 3 warnings results in being shot. At first, the walkers appear cheerful and hopeful, discussing their wishes if they win. However, after the first death occurs, their emotions and behavior begin to change as fear and desperation set in. In for the next part, which is middle, in the middle of the movie, the walk becomes increasingly exhausting as the distance grows and rest is limited. Many walkers suffer from physical illnesses, extreme fatigue, and mental stress, making it difficult to keep up with the required pace. Ray also struggles, especially during challenging moments, such as walking uphill and witnessing others being shot. Despite this, he continues with encouragement from Peter McBride, whom he best friends during the walk. Their bond shows how friendship and support help the characters cope with fear, conflict, and trauma. And lastly, toward the end, only a few walkers remain, completely drained both physically and mentally. Ray begins to regret his decision after seeing his mother among the crowd, but he is forced to continue walking. Eventually, only Ray and Peter are left. Unaware that Ray has received his final warning, Peter continues walking until Ray collapses and dies. The movie ends with Peter breaking down emotionally, highlighting the tragic cause of the competition. Moving on to the next point, 2.3, main character. The main character for this movie is Ray Garrity. Ray Garrity is portrayed as a supportive and kind individual who often encourages other workers throughout the movie. He is also motivated by his desire for justice after his father was executed by the major. Ray is well liked by somewhat naive and as he easily forms friendships, especially with Peter McBride. At the beginning, Ray is hopeful and determined to win the long walk. However, as the competition continues, his focus shifts from winning to simply surviving. He experiences fear, sadness, and trauma, yet grows stronger both physically and emotionally as he pushes himself beyond his limits while witnessing the death of his friends. Let's move on to the next point. 2.3 Major conflicts. The major conflict in the movie is the long walk itself, where the walkers are forced to continue walking without rest while maintaining a strict pace. This extreme condition pushes them to their physical and mental limits. Another conflict arises among the walkers as some provoke and pressure others, leading to increased stress and death. Additionally, the most disturbing conflict is the cruelty of the system, where the major and the audience treat the workers' suffering as entertainment, highlighting the injustice and inhumanity of the competition. And last but not least, 2.4 Key scenes showing personality development. One key scene is when Ray sees his mother in the crowd and expresses regret for not listening to her, showing his emotional growth and guilt. Another important scene involves Peter McBride, who shifts from being tough and distant to becoming supportive and caring, especially towards Ray. Lastly, the scene where the walkers struggle uphill shows Ray and Peter arguing but still helping each other, demonstrating the strong bond and trust they have developed despite conflict.
Moving on to the next point, which is the personality theories analysis, and I will be presenting Carl Jung's theory of analytical psychology and how it can be applied to the character Raymond Garrity in The Long Walk. So for the first slide, I start with the overview of Carl Jung's theory. So according to Carl Jung, personality is influenced by both conscious and unconscious processes. He proposed that the unconscious mind consists of two conscious, which is the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. In Raymond Garrity case, his behavior during the competition reflects not only his conscious determination to survive, but also deeper unconscious psychological struggles. As I stated earlier, there are two types of conscious, which the personal unconscious and collective unconscious. So the personal unconscious contain repressed or forgotten experiences that continue to influence behavior. For Raymond Garrity, the emotional pain, fear of death, and psychological pressure he experienced during the walk can be linked to an unresolved internal conflict stored in his personal unconscious. These suppressed emotions influence how he reacts under extreme stress. For the collective unconscious is a shared psychological inheritance containing universal patterns called archetypes. Raymond Garrity's experience reflects universal human themes such as survival, fear, endurance, and sacrifice, which align with Jung's idea that archetypes appear across different stories and cultures. So, what is archetypes? So basically, Jung introduced archetype as universal symbols within the collective unconscious. Well, there is four main archetypes include persona, shadow, anima or animus, and self. In Raymond Garrity, several archetypal patterns can be observed, particularly the persona and the shadow. These archetypes help explain the internal conflict between how he presents himself and what he actually feels internally. For persona, the persona refers to the social mask an individual present to others. It helps individuals to adapt to social expectation, and over identification with the persona may hide the true self. So, in the long walk, Raymond Garrity displays a strong, calm, and determined persona despite experiencing intense physical pain and psychological suffering. This constructed image allows him to remain motivated and avoid appearing weak in a hostile and competitive environment. However, this persona also hides his emotional vulnerability and inner fear. creating a contrast between his public behavior and internal state. Moving on to shadows. So, the shadow represents the hidden or unacceptable aspect of the self. It often denied or ignored by the conscious mind, and failure to acknowledge the shadow may lead to internal conflict. And in Raymond Garrity's case, his fear, desperation, anger, and thoughts of giving up can be seen as part of a shadow. These feelings are suppressed because showing weakness could lead to elimination, and Jung believed that denying the shadow can intensify psychological tension, which is evident in Raymond's increasing mental struggle throughout the work. So there are two types of attitudes, which is the introversion and extroversion. Uh, Introversion focus on inner thoughts, feelings, and reflection, while extroversion focus on external activities and social interaction. One attitude is usually dominant, but both exist in every individual. In Raymond Garrity's case, he demonstrates more introverted tendency as he frequently reflects internally on his pain, fear, and thoughts while walking. This inward focus highlight how his psychological experience is shaped more by internal reflection than by external interaction. So for the last part, I'll be explaining about individuation, which is a lifelong psychological development process, and it involves integrating conscious and unconscious elements, and it aims to achieve psychological balance and wholeness. So, throughout the competition, Raymond Garrity is forced to confront both his strengths and his vulnerability. Although the environment presents full psychological integration, his journey reflects an intense struggle towards self awareness under extreme conditions. In conclusion, Carl Jung Analytical Psychology provides a useful framework for understanding Raymond Garrity's psychological experience in the long walk, through concepts such as the unconscious mind, persona, shadow, and individuation. Jung's theory explained the complexity of Raymond's behavior and emotional conflicts throughout the story. That's all from me, and I'll be passing it to the next person.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Naklia. I will continue with my part, which is Alfred Adler, Individual Psychology. The first part is overview of Alfred Adler's theory, which is Alfred Adler developed individual psychologies focusing on purpose, meaning, and social connection. Human behavior is goal directed, not driven by unconscious sexual urge like Freud suggested. Personality is viewed as a unified whole shaped by subjective perception or private logic. Feelings of inferiority are universal and act as motivation for personal growth. Psychological health is reflected through social interest, cooperation, and contribution to society. Next is inferiority feelings. Adela believes inferiority feeling begin in childhood due to dependency and limitation. These feelings are completely normal and can motivate someone to self improvement. If someone feeling is in unresolved term, they may develop into an inferiority complex leading to self doubt and helplessness. In our movie, The Long Walk 2025, the main character, which is Raymond Garrity, can be called as Ray, experience intense physical and mental strain. The harsh condition of the walks amplify his helplessness, self-doubt, and exhaustion. Ray's struggle reflect how inferiority feeling can be overwhelmed because of the extreme pressure. Next is striving for superiority. Striving for superiority refers to the effort of someone to overcome their inferiority feeling and achieve self growth. This drift can be positive, which is self improvement, or negative, which is arrogant or domination. A superiority complex occurs when individual mask inferiority through pride or dominance. Ray's determination to keep walking shows his drive to prove his worth and endurance. However, his motivation becomes distorted when winning defines his identity and value. This shows how striving for superiority can turn self-defeating in oppressive system. Next is compensation mechanism. Compensation occurs when individuals develop strength to offset weaknesses. A positive compensation leads to growth, resilience, and perseverance. Negative or excessive compensation may lead someone to a superiority complex. Ray compensates for physical and mental weakness by pushing his endurance beyond limits. His preference reflects healthy competition initially. As the competition progresses, his self-worth becomes tied to outlasting others. Next is style of life. The social interests reflect concern for others and contribution to society. It is a key to indicator of psychological health in Adler's theory. The competitive environment of the long walk suppresses cooperation and empathy. Ray occasionally recognizes others' suffering, but survival pressure limits compassion. This highlights the conflict between self interest and social interest. The movie shows how extreme competition weakens social bonds. Next is conclusion of Adler's application. Ray's journey illustrates inferiority feeling, striving for superiority and compensation. His behavior reflects a clear style of life shaped by endurance and persistence. The tension between survival and empathy highlights challenges to social interests. Adler's theory helped explain Ray's motivation, resilience, and inner conflict. Overall, Adler provides a strong framework to understand race behavior in extreme conditions. Lastly, the strengths and limitations of Adler's theory. First, for the strengths, it explains race motivation and determination effectively, highlight purpose-driven behavior and resilience. Useful for us to understanding the behavior within a social and oppressive context. Next, this is limitation. It's difficult to apply social interest fully in a survival-based competition. It may overlook trauma, unconscious processes, and systematic coercion. As a fictional character, race action may serve narrative symbolism rather than realistic development. That's all from me. I will pass to the next person.
So let's go to the Erickson psychosocial theory. So about Ray Garrity, who a young character facing extreme physical and emotional challenge. So this is highlight how young people struggles with psychological development. So the Ray journey reflect two important stages in Eric Erickson's theory. So the first one is identity versus role confusion, which is a cure with during the adolescence, and he is always asking about who is he is, what he believe in, and what is truly matter to him. This show that his confusion about the identity and uncertainty about his future. So the second stage is intimacy and versus isolation, which begin during his young adulthood. So Ray often withdraw emotionally and struggles to open up to others, showing his fear of vulnerability. However, as the walk continues, the intense experience push him to form a very meaningful connection with the other's character. So overall of this, the long walk shows that Ray's gradual growth. So through his suffering and survival, he begins to gain a stronger sense of self and learn the importance of emotional connection, reflecting Eric Erickson's developmental stages in actions. So for the other, it is the psychosocial theory, which is at the stage 5, identity cohesion versus role confusion that occur during the adolescence. So the teenagers at this stage try to form their self-image by exploring their values, goals, and beliefs. The teenagers that may experiment with different roles and behavior to develop a clear sense of identity and direction in life. Okay, so in the long walk, Ray Garati, which is the main character, clearly show the identity confusion from the start of the film. He seemed very unsure about who he is, and even questions why he joins the walk. So Ray emotionally withdraws and tend to keep his feeling from to himself. He also avoid interacting closely to others, and this behavior show that Ray lacks of clear sense of self and still struggling to understand his identity well. Okay, so let's move on to stage 6 of Eric Erickson's psychosocial theory, which is intimacy versus isolation. So it's occur in early adulthood, and at this stage, individuals focus on forming a deep emotional connection between on trust, vulnerability, and mutual supports. If identity conflict from the adolescents are not resolved, people may fear intimacy and choose isolation instead. In the long walk, Ray Grati's identity remains unstable, which is make it difficult for him to form a close relationship. He keeps his interaction with the others superficial and often withdraws when conversation become emotionally deep. Even when he is clearly exhausted, uh, Ray reject help from the others and showing his fear on relying on people. Ray's silence, guarded behavior, and emotional distance reflect his fear of rejection and fear of dependence. These behaviors show how Ray struggles with intimacy and instead isolates himself, clearly illustrating Eric Erickson's intimacy versus isolation stage. So, the greatest difficulty in forming a close relationship is a result of his unresolved identity issues. So, at the beginning of the film, he withdraws with the others worker and that try to connect with him emotionally. So, he show guarded and defensive behavior, avoid eye contact, give a short response, and apa, react tensely to a personal question when the other asks about him. And then that this reflect his fear of vulnerability and preference for solitude. However, Reed does not remain isolated throughout the film. The emotional pressure of the walk caused him to face his fear and depend on others for support. As the story progresses, he slowly becomes more open emotionally um, and near to the end of the film, Ray begins to share his part of past and show a genuine concern for the other's worker. This moment show his growth toward intimacy and meaningful connection.
For the conclusion, let's start with 4.1 Summary of Ray Garrity's personality. Ray Garrity is a quiet, sensitive, and determined individual who displays a strongly introverted personality. He tends to keep his stress and emotions to himself, choosing to observe and reflect rather than express his feelings openly. Throughout the long walk, Ray shows high levels of empathy as he is deeply affected by the suffering and death of the other walkers. His sensitivity is closely connected to the loss of his father, which motivates his strong emotional reactions. Despite extreme physical exhaustion and mental pressure, Ray remains determined to continue the walk, showing strong inner resilience. Let's move on to the next point. 4.2 Integration of the three theories. From Carl Jung's perspective, Ray demonstrates an introverted personality, managing stress internally and maintaining emotional control under pressure. According to Alfred Adler's theory, Ray is motivated by a desire to give meaning to his pain rather than to feel superior to others. The loss of his father becomes a powerful drive that pushes him to keep doing despite reaching his limits. From Erik Erikson's viewpoint, Ray is a young individual undergoing identity development, and the long walk forces him to confront fear, loss, and uncertainty. Through this process, Ray begins to understand his values while still holding on to empathy and humanity. And the last point is 4.3 Overall Interpretation of Ray Garrity's Development. Overall, Ray Garrity's development shows how a harsh environment can shape and challenge an individual's personality. He begins the journey as a quiet and fearful young man, but gradually becomes mentally stronger and more self aware through pain and loss. Despite experiencing trauma and the death of his friends, Ray grows emotionally resilient and gains a deeper understanding of himself. By the end of the story, he comes to realize what truly matters to him. And that's all from us. Thank you.